Greetings. Maybe you're outraged by Twitter's permanent ban of President Donald Trump. Maybe your reaction is to cry, censorship. Maybe your reaction is to cry, big tech tyranny. Maybe your reaction is to say, Twitter shouldn't be allowed to stop Donald Trump from speaking his mind to the world. Now, it might be that some people's reaction would be to say, Twitter shouldn't be allowed to block Donald Trump, but blocking those Black Lives Matter activists is just fine. If so, then clearly it's not violation of the general principle that free speech should be allowed that bothers them, but only the shutting up of the particular person, Donald Trump, that bothers them. And I don't have anything to say about that, other than that of all the people to whom you could choose to grant special status in your mind, Donald Trump is not a very good choice. But it might be that your reaction is to say, Twitter shouldn't be allowed to block anyone from speaking his mind to the world. Twitter shouldn't be allowed to prevent anyone from expressing his thoughts to the world. Your reaction might be to say, it really is a form of censorship, what some people call big tech tyranny, for Twitter to decide who may and who may not express his thoughts freely on its social media platform. And that's wrong. That might be your reaction. Even if you find a temporary muting to be a reasonable step to take when trying to calm down a volatile situation, you might find a permanent Twitter ban on anyone to be unacceptable. Well, okay, I'm pretty much with you. I don't like unrestricted corporate freedom to do as the company chooses. I don't like, for instance, that corporations can fire people for things they say on social media, with the excuse that those individuals are representing the company. No, they're not. They're representing themselves. But it's allowed. Companies can fire you for what you say on social media. It's allowed. I've always hated that. Freedom of speech doesn't mean much if your exercise of that freedom means you get fired and can't make a living. And your right to free speech doesn't mean much if your thoughts can be cut off from the world by big tech companies' decisions not to let you use their platforms, the same ones everybody else can use. Sure, I agree. I've said before that I'm a flaming liberal, but I am what a friend once labeled a free speech liberal. I should think that all liberals would be. I think that Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, and Donald Trump should be allowed to say what they have to say on social media. Of course, I also think that Twitter should hire fact checkers who will insert notes into the tweets of those who have big followings, saying what's false and why it's false in what those popular tweeters attempt to post. I don't think that it's a good idea to have people flinging falsehoods across the internet willy-nilly, letting them pollute the minds of people who don't know any better. And it's an even worse idea to give such people megaphones so that their voices drown out the more reasonable voices coming from people who actually respect facts. No, I don't think that's a good idea. But fact-checking is one thing. Cutting off one's ability to voice his thoughts at all is quite another. But if you do indeed say that big tech companies shouldn't be allowed to cut off particular users whose messages they deem unacceptable, notice that you're taking the liberal side. You're not taking the conservative side. The conservative side defends the rights of capitalists to conduct their businesses as they see fit to the greatest possible extent. It's liberals who want to place limits on the freedom of capitalists to do as they please when running their own businesses. Twitter isn't a government organ. It's not constrained to guarantee the First Amendment's right to free speech. Twitter is a private enterprise. If you want to place constraints on Twitter so that it can't refuse to serve whichever customers it chooses not to, then you're taking the side of forcing a cake baker to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple. If you really think that corporations shouldn't be allowed to dictate to employees that they answer the phone with Happy Holidays instead of with Merry Christmas, so as not to offend any potential customers, then recognize what it is you're doing. You're arguing that yes, indeed, capitalists should be limited in what they can do and in what they can refuse to do. Those who run Twitter are capitalists too. You're arguing that they should be forced to serve Donald Trump, even if they themselves don't want to. You're taking the liberal side, not the conservative side. And welcome. I'm glad to have you on my side. We need more people to take liberal positions against the laissez-faire attitude that says companies can do whatever they want to, whatever the consequences might be. Just realize that that's the stance you're taking when you say that Twitter shouldn't be allowed to block people from tweeting. Unless, of course, you only think that Twitter shouldn't be allowed to block the particular user Donald Trump in an act of special pleading made all the worse by what Donald Trump says and by how he says it, and, two, by how his followers take what he says and act on what he says. But if you really think that as a general rule, Twitter shouldn't be allowed to block whomever it pleases, then welcome to the liberal camp. Welcome to my side of the aisle. As always, may reason and compassion be your guides.